Today, we're going to break down a pretty startling news study from the Network Contagion Research Institute. It basically uncovers this massive, coordinated anti-Indian hate campaign that just exploded online in 2025. And the findings? Well, they're staggering. It all starts with one absolutely huge number. 300 million. That's how many views researchers say posts containing anti-Indian hate God. But, it's the context around that number that makes it even more shocking. That's right. And get this wasn't happening all over the internet. This incredible reach, all 300 million views, it all happened on just one platform, X, what we all used to know as Twitter. And it all went down in a span of a single year. The study tracked this whole explosion of hateful language throughout 2025, and it really paints a picture of just how fast and intense this kind of thing can spread online. Okay, so let's really dive into this, because the NCRS study does more than just throw out a huge number. It actually shows us how a campaign like this managed to get so big so fast. So let's just look at the raw numbers for 2025. The researchers found over 24,600 distinct anti-Indian posts. These came from almost 14,000 different authors, and the engagement was massive. We're talking over 8.5 million likes and nearly 1 million retweets. The bottom line? The total amount of anti-Indian content on X basically tripled in just 1 year. So you hear that number, 14,000 authors, and you're probably thinking, wow, that's a widespread organic movement. But the study, which is actually called How a Small Network Hijacked the Immigration Debate, found something completely different. That title gives you a pretty big clue. So yeah, nearly 14,000 unique authors posted this stuff. On the surface, that looks like a huge grassroots thing, right? A lot of people sharing a similar opinion. But when the researchers dug a little deeper to see who was actually driving all that engagement, the whole picture changes. It turns out the entire campaign was being massively amplified by just 3 most prolific accounts. And just look at the outsized impact of these 3 accounts, identified as Neon White Cat, Matt Forney, and The Branca Show. Even though they only created about 525 posts themselves, they were responsible for over 10% of all the likes and an absolutely staggering 20% of all reposts in the entire dataset. This wasn't some organic groundswell. This was a highly coordinated push. So, okay, we've got 300 million views, but what were people actually seeing? What was in this content? Well, the researchers saw it falling into 3 main buckets, 3 distinct patterns of language. This really shows you how tactical the language was. The first pillar was just straight up ugly stuff, classic racist slurs. The second was more political, using words like invasion to talk about immigration. And the third was pure dehumanization, leaning on old, gross stereotypes. The report says these were often all mixed together, so you'd see racist slurs right alongside commentary about things like the H-1B visa for skilled workers. And here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers found that these surges in hate weren't random at all. They were often sparked by very specific events happening in the real world, and they were frequently aimed at high-profile people. You can see a really clear pattern here on this timeline. Anytime the Trump administration made an announcement about immigration policy, especially things related to the H-1B visa program, boom, the number of anti-Indian posts would just shoot up. It would go from a baseline of maybe 50 posts a day to over 300. The absolute peak was in mid-December, right after a new H-1B fee was proposed. And the campaign didn't just react to policy, it also went after specific individuals. When Donald Trump named Sriram Krishnan as senior advisor for AI, he was hit with a storm of attacks. This quote here from Laura Loomer is just one example, calling his appointment deeply disturbing and framing him as a third world invader. Second Lady Usha Vance was another huge target, especially for white nationalist influencers. The NCRI found more than 2,000 anti-Indian posts about her, using all sorts of slurs and arguing that her Indian heritage somehow disqualified her husband. When the vice president was asked about comments from one of the influencers, his response was, well, pretty direct. He told reporters the person could eat shit. And this is so crucial because we're not just talking about tweets and posts here, right? This kind of online rhetoric has tangible, real-world consequences. And it all starts with this strange, kind of ironic twist in the attacks themselves. You see, with a lot of anti-immigrant hate, the narrative is that foreigners are a drain on resources. But this campaign did the total opposite. It actually targeted Indian Americans for being too successful, with a median household income over 150 grand and 77% holding a college degree. The attacks paint them as an economic threat, stealing American jobs. And this is where you can really see that online hate spilling over into the real world. A survey in February 2026 from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace found that since the start of 2025, 1 in 4 Indian Americans reported being called a slur. 9% have been physically threatened. Others have gotten hate mail or had their property damaged. This isn't just online noise anymore. So what this whole thing really shows is how a tiny handful of accounts can essentially manufacture a massive hate campaign and create the illusion of a mass movement. It leaves us with a pretty tough question, right? If this can be done so easily and so effectively, what does that really mean for the future of our shared digital world?